Right, so I have another proportion question for you. So I have two parts. Let's solve for part A first. So 24 workers need to take 12 days to build a house. If 12 more workers join the group, how many days would it take to build the same house? And how many more workers are needed so that the project will take 3 days faster? Right, so first you can see clearly that the number of workers is inversely proportional to the number of days it takes to build a house. By the definition of inverse proportion, we know that the product of the number of workers and the number of days must be a constant. So if you let the number of workers to be W and the number of days to be D, we know that W times D is a constant. And substituting the values of W and D being 24 and 12 respectively gives us that our constant is equal to 288. So for part 1, when W is equal to 24 plus 12 or 36, since it says in the question that 12 more workers join the group, so instead of 12 we have 36, we can see that D must be equal to 288 over 36 after rearranging, which gives us an answer of 8. And then for part 2, when D is equal to 12 minus 3 or 9, since it says in the question that project will take 3 days faster, so instead of 3 we have 9, we see that W will be equal to 288 over 9, which gives us 32. But be careful, 32 is not our final answer because the question says how many more workers, so our answer will instead be 32 minus 24 or just 8. Part B is an interesting yet hard question. So 6 workers can build 4 houses in 8 days, and how many days does it take for 8 workers to build 6 houses? I'm going to present 2 methods to solve this question. So the first method involves quote-unquote basic ratios, if we would like to call that. So I've made 3 columns right here to represent the number of workers, the number of houses, and the number of days. So according to the question, it says that 6 workers corresponds to 4 houses, which corresponds to 8 days. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the number of workers to be 1 and the number of houses to be 4. And as we've seen previously, the number of workers is inversely proportional to the number of days. So if we divide the number of workers by 6, the number of days must be multiplied by 6. So it will be 48 in this case. Now what happens if I increase the number of workers to 8? Well, the number of houses still stay the same. Well, if I multiply the number of workers by 8, I must divide the number of days by 8. So there will be 6 days. Next, I'm going to change the number of houses right here. So what happens if I change the number of houses to be 1? Well, the number of workers still stay the same, which is 8. Well, notice that the number of houses built is directly proportional to the number of days. So if I divide the number of houses by 4, I must also divide the number of days by 4. So this will be 1.5 days. Again, I'm still going to set the number of workers to be 8, and instead I'm going to set the number of houses to be 6. So what happens if I multiply the number of houses by 6? Well, since they are directly proportional to each other, we can just multiply the number of days by 6 to get an answer of 9. This is our final answer. So the second method will involve proportions. Now this might be a little bit tricky for some of you guys, but just bear with me for this. So I've written 3 variables to represent the number of workers, which is W, the number of houses, which is H, and the number of days, which is represented by D. So we're going to see how certain pairs of these variables are related to each other. So first, what is the relation between W and H? Or in other words, what is the relation between the number of workers and the number of houses? Well, if we increase the number of workers, the number of houses will also increase, and vice versa. If we decrease the number of workers, the number of houses built will be less. So we can see that this is an example of direct proportion. So we can rewrite that W is directly proportional to H by this symbol. Next, we're going to observe the relationship between W and D. What is the relation between the number of workers and the number of days? If we increase the number of workers, that project would take less time. And vice versa, if we decrease the number of workers, the project would take longer. So we can see that this is an example of inverse proportion, and we can rewrite that W is directly proportional to 1 over D, or in other words, W is inversely proportional to D. We can combine these two relationships to get that W is proportional to the expression h over d. Or in other words, rewriting this as an equation, we see that W must be equal to k times h over d, where k is our constant. Now, according to the question, it says that 6 workers can build 4 houses in 8 days. So substituting these values gives us that k is equal to 12. Rewriting our equation with our known value of k, that will be W is equal to 12 times h over d. Now finally, we want to find the value of d when W is 8 and h is equal to 6. So let's just substitute those values right away. So W is equal to 8 and h is equal to 6. Solving this gives us that d is equal to 9, which is our same final answer as our previous method, which ends this video.